Did the ancient Greeks know about China? This is the question that I want to discuss with you today. When exactly did the ancient Greeks learn about the ancient Chinese, people that lived thousands of miles away on the other side of the planet, at the edge of the world from the Greek perspective? This is the time when lands far and wide would have been seen more akin to mythical lands than actual countries and places that existed. So are there any sources that mention the Chinese? And if so, what did they say about them? So let's jump into this video. The first ancient source that I want to mention is that of the legendary Greek historian Herodotus. Herodotus described the world during his time that was surprisingly extensive. He was born 4 years before the Battle of Thermopylae in 484 BC. For those of you who do not remember, that is the battle highlighted in the movie 300 between the Spartans and the Persians. Herodotus was born at the gates to Asia and modern-day Turkey, but he was able to highlight and discuss the world with some accuracy, including lands like the Western Mediterranean, where he describes the Celts and the civilization of Tartessus, which is in modern-day Spain. Herodotus says, "The Ister flows from the lands of the Celts and the city of Pyrene through the very middle of Europe." Now the Celts live beyond the Pillars of Hercules, being neighbors of the Cynici, who are the westernmost of all the peoples inhabiting Europe. Now the Pillars of Hercules that Herodotus seems to be referring to is of course the Strait of Gibraltar. Ancient Greeks called it the Pillars of Hercules because of the large mountains on either side of the strait, one being the Rock of Gibraltar and the other Jebel Musa, which is located in Morocco. There's a good chance that Herodotus knew about these lands because of Phoenician and Greek settlements on the Iberian Peninsula, such as Gadara. But these weren't the only lands described by Herodotus. He also talked about places such as Ethiopia. He obviously knew about places like Babylon and areas of the Middle East because these were part of the enormous Achaemenid Persian Empire. But the lands that Herodotus described as farthest to the east were not China. He talked about India as the land at the edge of the world. Herodotus described India as very rich, but he also talked about how the land is closest to the dawn sun. And beyond India is nothing but sand and desert. One passage from Herodotus describes how little he knew of even India. He says, "In this sandy desert are ants not as big as dogs, but bigger than foxes. The Persian king has some of these, which have been caught there. These ants live underground, digging out the sand in the same way as the ants in Greece, to which they are very similar in shape. And the sand which they carry from the holes is full of gold." This highlights how little Herodotus truly knew about these lands, the lands of the far, far east. So, if it wasn't Herodotus, and if the Greeks of the 5th century BC didn't know about China, who was the first to describe it? There's a chance that China was first described in the Indica written by Ctesias. The land known as Saris is mentioned, but our only source of the Indica is someone from the 9th century in the Byzantine Empire, in which he would have known about China. So the account of China is not entirely reliable, but there is a possibility that China could have been mentioned in the 5th century BC, but probably not. So who do we look to next? The next best source is most definitely from Strabo. Strabo was a Greek geographer born before the time of Jesus, also in Turkey, and gives us the best geographical account of the world during the time around the reign of Augustus. Strabo mentions Saris, which we believe to be China, when he's talking about the Bactrian kingdoms, the same Bactrian kingdoms that were ruled by the descendants of Alexander and the men who helped him take over the world. Strabo specifically says in a chapter about Bactria that they extended their empire even as far as the Saris. It is because of Alexander's conquest into the lands that Herodotus once considered farthest to the east, or India, that we first begin to see contact between the west and the east. It is also the Bactrian kingdoms that would lead to China's first encounter with the west. We see this specifically with the explorer Zhang Qian, who journeyed into Central Asia and came into contact with the Greco-Bactrians and the Parthian Empire. But Strabo gives us almost no information about what Ceres really was. It was really only understood during the Roman and Greek times that China was the land of silk, and it was not just Strabo. Pomponius Mela, a Roman geographer born in 15 AD in Spain, he named the Ceres as one of the 3 people that inhabited the eastern edges of Asia. Our first real descriptions of China come from Pliny the Elder, another Roman geographer who describes China and the people of China, specifically talking about their silk. He says the first race then encountered are the Ceres, so famous for their fleecy product of their forests. The Ceres are famous for their woolen substance obtained from their forests. After a soaking in water, they comb off the white down of the leaves. So manifold is the labor employed, and so distant is the region of the globe drawn upon, to enable the Roman maiden to flaunt transparent clothing in public. He also describes the people as, "These people," they said, "exceeded the ordinary human height, had flaxen hair and blue eyes, and made an uncouth sort of noise by way of talking, having no language of their own for the purpose of communicating their thoughts." This description, as was many ancient historical descriptions, more akin to a tale or a legend than actual fact. Now, the final historical account that I would like to bring up is from Ptolemy, the ancient Roman Egyptian mathematician and historian who described the lands to the east. Unlike any historian before him, he describes the lands of China as 2 separate places. He states, "The inhabited part of our earth is bounded on the east by the unknown land which lies along the region occupied by the easternmost nations of Asia Major, the Sinai and the nations of Ceres." Like many historians before him, he mentions Ceres, or Ceres, which is the land to the north, that is bounded to the south by the land known as Sinai. He mentions that Sinai is reached by water and that Ceres is reached over land by the Silk Road land routes. And these 2 lands can easily be seen in Ptolemy's map of the world, clearly distinct from other lands like India. So it becomes clear that the Greeks of the ancient world did in some way or another know about the ancient Chinese, but really only after Alexander's conquest of Central Asia and parts of India. These conquests were essential in connecting the East and the West, and it was also the rise of the Han dynasty which allowed for the creation of the Silk Road and its many routes, which led to the Greek and Romans around the time of Jesus to first learn of the Chinese. Even though many historians described the Chinese and knew of their existence in some way or another, the information that they had was highly inaccurate and far from the truth. While there is possibility that an envoy sent by Emperor Marcus Aurelius could have reached China, the first real accounts from travelers to China in the West came from traders and explorers like Marco Polo, which came thousands of years later. So did the Greeks and Romans know about China? The answer is yes, but what they knew about China was really almost nothing. Anyways guys, thank you for watching. I plan to do more videos similar to this one, talking about the relationship between different ancient societies, because personally, I think it's one of the most interesting topics when it comes to history. I enjoy it a lot, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you want to. I should have my next video coming out relatively soon, but I am going to New York for 7 days for vacation, so that may delay my next video, but hopefully it'll be out soon enough. So thanks again. Have a good one.